Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. We have been talking about the state of emergency that has been announced last week, and I have been having that conversation this morning with former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Now, you indicated that as it pertains to the announcement of a state of emergency, it should always come from the government, the sitting administration, even the prime minister. How can these type of communications be structured to ensure a balance between public awareness and national confidence? You did say that in a situation like this, you would not recommend the disclosure of so much information. Talk to us about how you see this, being done in an effective manner.
Why when people criticize me, I was there. We had several prison officers calling hits on other members on the outside using cell phones. There was one gang leader, 4 cell phones in 24 hours. Every time we tracked that he had a cell phone, we went in the cell, he did 3 hours later, he was making a call, we realized he had a cell. 4 cell phones he got in 24 hours. And it meant that there were prison officers who were giving him cell phones. Let us not be prison service. That happens all over the world. There are situations like that. The point being is that we saw what happened. We saw what transpired. They were calling hits on other persons on the outside, prison officers as well. Thankfully, I formed a special operation response team. We actually went in there into the prison, and when prisoners started misbehaving or whatever, I tried to explain to them who is the boss, and all of a sudden they backed down. So that is what needs to be done. So the concept of when people say, well, what could have been done? We had the exact scenario. And the exact scenario is it was never me running and crying. Well, let me run to the government and call a S.O.E, as this commissioner has done, not run and give up 30 prisons and send them to Guantanamo Bay in Stouffville Bay and Tetron Barrack. As I mentioned, the comprehensive operational plan I did. And that is why it is important when it is that you select a commissioner of police, you need people who are tactical. We didn't see it with McDonald Jacob. I saw it with Benjamin. Benjamin was very tactical, very operational on the ground, being there. And that is the type of commissioner you need at this time. Hopefully, in the next few years, if we're able to lock down the country, you can have that type of diplomatic statesman with a cane like Stephen Williams and McDonald Jacob. Right now, you need that tactical operation. And that is what should have been done, as I said. We had a wing, we brought the army into the prisons, we had CCTVs, we had a command center, and they could not make a note for months. After Gary Griffith left down, they brought them right back to the same place. Why did you shut down the wing? Why did you remove the cameras? Why did you remove the police? Why did you remove the three-layered approach? Everything that was done, well, it was done without having to surrender the prisons. And that is my point. No, if it is that a state of emergency has already been declared and it has been approved, and this is what I will say, that let us now, let us give enough support to the police, and that really the commissioner on. You can't have a state of emergency and be just attacking the government and attacking the police for calling it. It has happened. Our job now is to give them as much support as possible so that they can be successful. Because I can assure you that with the S.O.E, there's going to be a decrease in the murder rate. If that was the end result in a technical backroom decision, that is what you really wanted, that is of benefit to the country, the reduction of murders, so be it. But as I said, the calling of a state of emergency, it is like a new ball. When it is when you call for that new ball, it's because you have two batsmen out there that are very stubborn and you need to get them out. But if you call in that new ball too soon and nothing happens, what are you left with? That was the last resort. That is why I never went to the Prime Minister for a state of emergency, because I knew I could handle out that proclamation from the president. Because when you get that and things still continue to go south, what are you going to turn to? You can't just, because some prisoners are making calls, put hits on people, you call it. The government has a right to have agreed to the view of the Commissioner of Police. Because if they did not, and things started to, the government will be held responsible. So they have to take to the expert. But the expert is supposed to be trained and qualified in understanding tactical situations, do a combat appreciation. If he does not have that, because he's only intelligence driven and he doesn't have the tactical concept to be able to be operational, he's immediately, every time the rain falls, the sun is too hot, he's going to run to the government to call a S.O.E and recommend a S.O.E. The government was in their right to have decided on it, based on what the commissioner told them. My point being is he did not have to on the road if he was trained and qualified in operations and tactics. Because I had the exact situation a few years ago and we dealt with it without running to the government crying and begging for it.
Right, and we saw a situation where even in the press release they expressed that members of the office of the public prosecutor, their lives are also in jeopardy based on the threat that is being put out by these criminals. How do you think security should be boosted in the office of the public prosecutor to ensure not just that they are safe, but that the staff feel safe? What type of security boost you think should be done in that area?
Well, there's a difference with information, intelligence, and evidence. What was stated is definitely not evidence because persons would have been arrested. So it wasn't evidence. It's not even intelligence because if it was intelligence, there would be enough justification to assemble that intelligence to turn it into evidence. So it can very well be information, and information will come about. They will listen. There were 43 death threats to myself. It didn't mean that I kept jumping from pillar to post to make sure that I had body armor if I go on tower. You can't live your life being based on hearsay and rumor and propaganda. The point being is that if you hear something, you're not going to trivialize it. What you do is you neutralize the threat, which is what I did. So if there's that there were concerns pertaining to putting hits on public officials or whatever, I took the information, you analyze it, and you neutralize the individuals that may be instrumental in conducting such a situation. So it's not so much of you trying to put a layer of thing around the individual. That is one aspect. The main element is to touch and neutralize the person who is doing it, which is what I did. And that would have been prisoners, that would have been gang leaders, that would have been persons involved in criminal activities, which is why there was that $200,000 hit on my head and 43 death threats and so forth, because I was targeting the individuals who would have been instrumental in probably implementing what was being, what people were saying. That is what is required. So it's a twofold approach. It is yes, so you can put extra layers of security on the threat. But if you keep saying that we're going to put we want to be a target to the 41 members of parliament, you're not going to put 200 police officers around each member of parliament. What you do is you analyze the situation the threat is coming from, and you neutralize the threat. That is the priority. And again, all of that, what I speak about, you need to be trained in tactics, in counter-revolutionary warfare, in combat appreciation. If the present commissioner does not have that, then he's not going to understand what I'm saying. It's going to be a different language. And then what he's going to do is throw his towel in, beg for a state of emergency, and shift the prisoners into Guantanamo Bay in Trinidad and Tobago.
Excellent. And finally, even as it pertains to moving forward in Trinidad and Tobago and how state of emergencies are called and how frequently they are called, you did highlight that this has a negative economic impact, specifically on our international partners and foreign investors, when every 2 to 3 months you hear the country is calling a state of emergency. Just explain that for the persons that are listening, how this, negatively impacts our international perception or the international perception of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, they say what they want. I mean, the government is in their right to try to deny it. But I ask you, if it is that you hear Barbados has a state of emergency and they are threatened by prisoners to kill the DPP and to kill police officers and public officials, would you buy a plane ticket to go Barbados? The answer is no. The vast majority would not. Would you want to invest in Barbados? Would you want to put any sort of revenue? Would you want to do business there? It affects the economy. It affects trade. It affects investment. It affects tourism. That is a fact. The United States, 35 years later, the United States still has us on a security alert state of people, of telling U.S. citizens, when you come to Trinidad, be very careful because of terrorist activity. The last time we had any degree of terrorist activity was in 1990, and they have held on to that for their life. So you imagine, when not 35 years ago, but now a commissioner of police openly stating, well, we have prisoners who have the ability to get phones and to kill public officials and the DPP. That shows incompetence at the highest level. There is no need to have gone down that road. There's no need to have exposed something, whether it is true or not. Now, the only reason you must give the public information is if you know the public needs to know this to assist in securing the public. So, for example, you know for a fact that there are terrorist elements who intend to blow up buildings, whatever. We now need to check. This is what you need to be aware of. If you see things in a bin in a mall or whatever, that is something totally different. That is not what this was about. This was about specifically targeted person from the prison. And if that is the case, only the individuals who may be of the possible target should have been briefed. The prisons to stop and neutralize the persons from conducting such an operation. But to tell the whole world of something that we can deal with, you have now affected trade, tourism, investment, the economy, everything. That is my point. And that it should not have gone that way. And again, this is not a fault of the government, but because of those people who just blindly want to support the politicians. Well, the government appointed this man. If the government appointed this man, we can't attack this individual. That is not how you operate. How does that help you? How does that help your family? How does that help your country? You have to stop being politically blinded and start thinking of the bigger picture. Think of Team TNT rather than Team Political Party. Because this is not a fault of the government. I'm not blaming the government for what has been done. What has been done was a knee-jerk approach that could have been dealt with in a better manner. As I said quickly again, he had no right to have sent a recommendation and gone public without the government approving. He had no right to made a press media conference to preempt what was going to be said by the government. He had no right to bypass his blind minister by going straight to the prime minister. And above all, he had no right to have given so much information that has affected us regionally and internationally and put fear on the citizens when this matter. You know how many things I was aware of as commissioner of police. If every time I hear this, I do a press conference to tell the country the concerns of what is taking place from a national security perspective. People wouldn't be taking their children to school. It does not work that way. National security does not work that way. And unless you have proper ministers and commissioners who understand that, you're going to put undue panic to affect the country, because the only thing that is more important than reduction of crime is the perception of and fear of crime. And if it is you do the wrong thing and say the wrong thing, then you would have failed.
So well, we want to thank you so much for your time this morning and for, giving us a bit of your expertise there as former police commissioner. We're going to take a quick break right here and we'll be back with much more conversations right after this. See you soon.
To a brand new dawning as the passion start to rise.